The Ghost in the Dark, the Zyreth Dominion had conquered 47 star systems in less than a decade. Their fleets moved like silver storms through the void, and HFY doctrine was simple. Overwhelm, dominate, erase. They didn't negotiate. They simply arrived, and worlds fell silent. Earth was next. High Commander Vectrin stood on the bridge of the Sovereign Talon, the Dominion's flagship, watching the blue-green planet grow larger on the tactical display. His scaled hands rested on the command rail, claws clicking softly against the metal. Around him, officers worked in quiet efficiency, their faces lit by the glow of holographic readouts. Distance to target? Vectrin asked. 42 million kilometers, High Commander, his tactical officer replied. The human defense grid is active, but minimal. 3 orbital stations, 26 warships, all primitive design. Vectrin's eyes narrowed. The intelligence reports had been clear. Humanity was young. They had barely left their home system. Their weapons were chemical-based, their shields weak, their ships slow. The Dominion had faced fiercer resistance from mining colonies. Deploy the advanced wings, Vectrin ordered. Standard formation. This will be over before the humans can even transmit a distress signal. The fleet moved forward, 300 ships strong, their hulls gleaming with energy shielding that had turned aside plasma, lasers, and particle beams from dozens of species. The Zyreth had perfected war. They had studied every known combat doctrine, adapted to every weapon type, crushed every resistance. Earth would be no different. But then the sensors flickered. High Commander, the scanning officer said, her voice uncertain. We're detecting an anomaly. Grid 773, deep space. Just beyond the outer orbital plane. Vectrin turned. Specify. The officer's claws danced across her console. It's a ship, human design. Old. Very old. It's been drifting for, she paused, recalculating. For over 2 centuries, a murmur rippled through the bridge. 200 years. That was ancient by human standards. A relic. Show me, Vectrin said. The main display shifted. There, floating in the darkness like a tomb, was a massive human vessel. Its hull was scarred and pitted, its surface covered in the silent dust of deep space. No lights, no energy signature, no movement. Heard in the front, just dead metal, rotating slowly in the void. It's a prototype, the scanning officer continued. Pre-war era, kinetic-based weapon systems, chemical propulsion backup, experimental cryosleep pods. Tui looked up. High Commander, this ship was lost during humanity's first attempts at deep space colonization. They never found it. Vectrin stared at the image. Kinetic weapons, projectiles, physical mass accelerated by crude magnetic rails. The Dominion had encountered such weapons before, centuries ago, when they first began their expansion. They were laughably primitive, slow, inaccurate, easily countered by modern shielding. Ignore it, Vectrin said, turning back to the tactical display. It's a corpse. Focus on the primary target. But the scanning officer hesitated. High Commander, there's something strange. The ship's core is still active, minimal output but present. And I'm detecting... The display flashed red. Deep inside the ancient vessel, something stirred. The darkness had been absolute, silent, endless, and then light. Captain Elora Miles gasped as the cryopod cracked open, pale mist spilling out around her. Her lungs burned, her muscles screamed. Her mind was thick, clouded, struggling to remember where she was, who she was, why everything felt wrong. Captain, a voice rasped nearby. Captain, are you? Emergency, protocol. Elora managed, her voice hoarse. She forced her eyes open, blinking against the harsh red glow of emergency lighting. The cryobay was alive with motion, pods hissing open, crew members stumbling out, confusion painted across every face. What happened? Someone shouted. Where are we? Elora pulled herself upright, gripping the edge of her pod. Her fingers trembled. 2 centuries. The word echoed in her mind before she even understood why. 200 years. The ship's AI had said it the moment she woke. 200 years since launch. 200 years since Earth sent them out on a mission that was supposed to last 6 months. Status. Elora barked, forcing command into her voice. Someone give me a status report. Lieutenant Kovas stumbled to the nearest console, his hands shaking as he pulled up the ship's systems. Captain, we're operational. Barely. Core power at 18%. Life support stable. Weapons systems offline but intact, and he stopped, his face going pale. Captain, there's a fleet. Alien design. 300 ships, they're heading straight for Earth. The words hit like a physical blow. Earth. Home. The planet they had left just months ago, except it wasn't months. It was 200 years. Everyone they knew was gone. The world had moved on. And now it was in danger. Ilara straightened, her training overriding the grief clawing at her chest. Wake the rest of the crew. Get weapons online, and someone tell me what the hell we're flying. The Ingenuity captain, Kova said quietly, Project Warhammer, the first deep space prototype. Built when we thought we'd need to fight wars between star systems with nothing but metal and momentum. Ilara looked around the ancient bridge, at the crew struggling to their feet, at the displays flickering to life after centuries of sleep. This wasn't the future they'd imagined. This wasn't the mission they'd signed up for. But Earth was threatened. And the Ingenuity had been built for one purpose. Power up the railguns, Ilara said. Outside, the Zareth fleet advanced, confident and unstoppable. They had no idea what was about to wake up. When old metal meets new shields, the Zareth advanced fleet moved through space with practiced precision. Wing Commander Jalreese watched from her command chair as the formation tightened, preparing for the final approach to Earth's orbital defense perimeter. Her screens showed the human stations, small, outdated, pathetic really, scrambling to organize a response they had no hope of mounting. All ships maintain formation, Jalreese transmitted. Energy weapons charged, shields at maximum. We breached their line in 12 minutes. Her crew acknowledged in unison. This was routine. The Dominion had performed this maneuver hundreds of times. Human resistance would crumble within the hour, and by nightfall on their largest continent, the Zareth flag would fly over their capital. Then her sensor officer spoke, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Wing Commander, the derelict vessel. It's moving. Jalreese glanced at the secondary display. The ancient human ship, the one High Commander Vectran had dismissed as irrelevant, was no longer drifting. Its position had shifted. Thrusters were firing in small controlled bursts, ancient chemical propulsion systems that looked like something from a museum. It's adjusting its trajectory. The officer continued, bearing directly toward our formation. Jalreese felt a flicker of irritation. One ship, 2 centuries old. Ignore it and maintain. Wing Commander, I'm detecting power spikes across its hull. Multiple systems coming online. Weapons ports opening. Now Jalreese sat forward. Weapons ports. On a derelict, she pulled up the detailed scan studying the vessel's architecture. It was massive, larger than 3 of her warships combined, but its design was crude, thick armor plating, no energy shielding. And those weapons, she zoomed in on the emerging gun barrels. Physical projectile weapons, she said, almost laughing. They're going to fire metal at us. Her tactical officer looked up, confused. Wing Commander, our shields are calibrated for energy dispersion. Plasma, lasers, particle beams. Should we adjust for kinetic impact? From a 200-year-old human vessel? Jalreese shook her head. Our shields will deflect anything they throw, even if they could aim properly, which I doubt. Continue the advance. But something nagged at her. Something about the way the ancient ship moved. Deliberately, purposefully, as if the crew inside knew exactly what they were doing. On the bridge of the Ingenuity, Captain Ilara Miles stood at the tactical station, her hands gripping the console as data streamed across the screens. Her crew had fought through the initial shock of their impossible situation and now moved with grim determination. They were soldiers. They had a mission. The grief and loss could wait. Distance to hostile fleet? Ilara asked. 800,000 kilometers in closing, Lieutenant Kovas reported. They're maintaining formation. Shields are active, energy-based dispersion field. Standard Zareth configuration according to what little our AI can extrapolate. Weapons status. Chief Engineer Ramos looked up from his console, sweat beading on his forehead. Main rail guns are online. Capacitors charged to 70%. That'll have to do. If we wait for full charge, they'll be on top of Earth stations. Mass drivers operational, ammunition magazines intact. 200 years in cold storage, but the rounds are solid. Ilara allowed herself a thin smile. The Ingenuity had been built during Earth's paranoid early years of space exploration, when humanity expected to fight wars with projectiles because energy weapons were still theoretical. They'd loaded this ship with tons of solid metal, depleted uranium slugs, tungsten penetrators, titanium-jacketed rounds designed to punch through armor at relativistic speeds. The galaxy had moved on to lasers and plasma. The Dominion had perfected energy warfare, but nobody had been shot at with a railgun in 200 years. Targeting solution, Ilara ordered. Lead ship in their advance formation. Single round. Let's see what they do. Kovas worked quickly, his fingers dancing across the ancient targeting interface. Solution locked. Range, 750,000 kilometers. Velocity at impact, 0.03 light speed. Time to target, 8.2 seconds. Fire, Ilara said. Deep in the Indomitex's hull, magnetic coils surged with power. A 5-ton tungsten slug accelerated down a 100-meter rail, building speed until it shot from the barrel in a flash of electromagnetic discharge. No beam, no visible trail, just a piece of metal traveling at 9,000 kilometers per second. Silent, invisible. Lethal. Wing Commander Gelrace never saw it coming. One moment her lead frigate, the Swift Talon, was cruising at the head of the formation, shields shimmering with protective energy. The next moment, the entire front third of the ship simply exploded. Metal shredded. Atmosphere vented in a violent cloud. The frigate spun wildly, secondary explosions rippling along its hull as internal systems ruptured. Within 3 seconds, it was dead. What was that? Gelrace shouted, leaping from her chair. Report. Her sensor officer's hands flew over his console, replaying the data. Something hit the Swift Talon. Physical impact. The object passed through their energy shields like they weren't even there. No dispersion, no deflection. It just went straight through. Gelrace stared at the debris field where her frigate had been. That's impossible. Nothing passes through Dominion shielding without. Wing Commander, the derelict is firing again. This time, Gelrace watched. The ancient human ship had rotated, bringing more weapons to bear. She saw the brief flash of electromagnetic discharge and then nothing. No visible projectile. No warning. Just waiting. Evasive maneuvers, she screamed. All ships scatter formation, but the Zyreth vessels were built for energy combat. Fast, maneuverable, but predictable. They dodged beams and plasma bursts with practiced ease. They had never learned to dodge something they couldn't see. The second tungsten slug caught a destroyer amidships. The impact was catastrophic. The projectile carried so much kinetic energy that it punched completely through the ship, leaving a perfectly circular hole 10 meters wide. The destroyer broke apart, its superstructure unable to handle the sudden structural failure. 2 ships. It's 2 shots. 2 kills. Return fire, Gelrace ordered. All weapons on that derelict. Bring it down now. The Zereth ships opened up with everything they had. Plasma beams lanced through space, converging on the Indomitex. Particle cannons fired in rapid succession. Energy weapons designed to overwhelm shields and vaporize hulls. The ancient human ship sat there and took it. Because the Indomitex didn't have energy shields. It had armor. Thick, redundant, old-fashioned metal plating designed to absorb punishment. The plasma washed over its hull, scorching and melting the surface, but unable to penetrate deep enough to reach critical systems. The particle beams left glowing scars, but failed to breach the underlying structure. They're not using shields, Gelrace whispered, horrified understanding dawning. They're using armor, raw armor. And armor didn't fail all at once. It degraded slowly, which meant the human ship could sit there, absorbing fire, while it calmly lined up its next shot. The third railgun round destroyed a cruiser. The fourth crippled 2 frigates locked in tight formation. The fifth, all ships retreat, Gelrace screamed. Fall back to the main fleet. Fall back now. The Zereth advance wing broke formation, ships scattering as they burned hard for the safety of High Commander Vectron's position. Behind them, the ancient human prototype rotated slowly, deliberately, like a predator choosing its next target. On the Indomitex, Ilara watched the alien ships flee, her expression hard. Cease fire. Conserve ammunition. Captain, Kovas said, his voice filled with something like awe. We just sent an entire wing running, 40 ships, and we haven't even moved from this position. Ilara nodded slowly, her eyes on the tactical display where Earth hung vulnerable and blue. Somewhere down there 200 years had passed. Everyone she'd known was gone. The world had changed beyond recognition, but humanity was still humanity, and the Indomitex was still humanity's weapon. Contact Earth Defense Command, Ilara said quietly. Tell them the cavalry's here. And it's 2 centuries out of date, but it'll do. She turned to her crew, seeing the determination in their faces. They'd lost everything, but they'd found something too. A purpose, a mission, a reason to fight. All hands, Ilera announced over the ship-wide comm. Prepare for sustained combat operations. We're gonna show these bastards what old-school human engineering can do. The end of my text aligned itself between the enemy fleet and Earth, ancient and scarred, and absolutely deadly. The Zyreth Dominion was about to learn a very old lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't the newest one. It's the one nobody remembers how to fight. The weapon they forgot. High Commander Vectrin watched the tactical display in silence as his advance wing limped back to the main fleet, 5 ships destroyed, 8 more damaged. Around him, the bridge of the Sovereign Talon had gone quiet, officers exchanging uncertain glances. The Dominion didn't retreat. The Dominion didn't lose ships to primitive species, and yet, report, Vectrin said, his voice dangerously calm. Wing Commander Zhao Reese appeared on the communication screen, her face pale. High Commander, the human derelict is fully operational. It's armed with kinetic weapons, physical projectiles accelerated to near-relativistic speeds. Our energy shields are completely ineffective. They pass through as if the shields aren't there. Vectrin's claws tightened on the command rail. One ship. You're telling me one ancient human vessel drove back 40 of our warships? High Commander, with respect, this isn't a vessel we know how to fight. Our doctrine, our shields, our tactics, everything we've developed is designed for energy combat. This ship is throwing metal at us, and our defenses simply don't apply. Vectrin turned to his science officer. Explain. The officer brought up a simulation on the main display. Energy shields work by dispersing and deflecting directed energy. Lasers, plasma, particle beams. They redirect the energy around the ship. But kinetic projectiles have mass. Physical mass. The shields try to disperse something that can't be dispersed. The projectile simply passes through the field and impacts the hull with full force. Then adjust the shields. Vectrin snapped. Recalibrate them for kinetic defense. High Commander, our shields aren't designed for that. It would take days to modify, and even then, stopping a 5-ton projectile traveling at 3% light speed. The officer shook his head. The kinetic energy alone would overwhelm any shield we could generate. We'd need to reinvent our entire defensive doctrine. Vectrin stared at the display, watching the ancient human ship holding position between his fleet and Earth. One vessel, 200 years old, and it had just invalidated 3 centuries of Dominion military superiority. How many ships do we have in the fleet? Vectrin asked quietly. 294 operational vessels, High Commander. And they have 1. Vectrin straightened, his decision made. Then we overwhelm them. Full fleet advance. Every ship. Concentrate all fire on that single target. Even armor has limits. We'll burn through it. His tactical officer hesitated. High Commander, if we commit the entire fleet and fail. We won't fail, Vectrin interrupted. Because failure isn't acceptable. The Dominion has never retreated from a primitive species, and we won't start now. Prepare for full assault. Orders flowed through the fleet. 300 warships began moving forward, a wall of silver and death, energy weapons charging, shields at maximum. If the humans wanted to fight with ancient weapons, fine. The Dominion would show them what modern firepower could do. On Earth, in the orbital defense station Sentinel Prime, Commander David Chen watched the approaching alien fleet with a mixture of terror and desperate hope. Behind him, his command crew worked frantically, coordinating with the 24 human warships that represented Earth's entire military space force. Sir, the alien fleet is advancing in full strength, his tactical officer reported. All ships? They're not holding anything back. Chen nodded grimly. Earth's ships were fast, maneuverable, well-trained, but they were hopelessly outgunned. The Zyreth had weapons that could vaporize a human destroyer in seconds. This wasn't going to be a battle, it was going to be an execution. Then his communication officer spoke up, voice trembling. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the enemy techs. What? The prototype, sir, the one that just showed up. They're hailing us. Chen activated the channel. A woman's face appeared on his screen, mid-30s, dark hair pulled back, eyes that held an exhaustion that went beyond physical fatigue. But there was steel there too, command presence, authority. This is Captain Ilera Miles of the Earth Defense Vessel Ingenuity, she said. I understand we've been gone for a while, But we're still human, and that's still Earth, and we're not letting anyone take it. Transmitting tactical data now. We're going to hold the line. Chen stared at her. Captain, with all respect, you're one ship. They have 300, even if your weapons are effective. Commander, I don't need a lecture on odds, Ilara interrupted. I need you to trust that we know what we're doing. Keep your ships back. Protect the orbital infrastructure. Let us do what the Ingenuity was built for. The transmission ended before Chen could respond. Lieutenant Kovas looked up from his tactical station, face grim. Captain, they're coming. All of them. 294 ships in attack formation. They're going to try to burn through our armor with concentrated fire. Ilara studied the display, watching the Xyrath fleet advance like a silver tide. She'd commanded ships before, fought in simulations, trained for scenarios just like this. But those had been theoretical exercises. Dames, this was real. Earth hung behind her, vulnerable and precious, and she had one ancient warship to stop an empire. Engineering, how's our armor holding up? She asked. Ramos's voice came through, rough but steady. We've got scorch marks and some surface ablation from their first attack, but structural integrity is at 91%. The old engineers built this thing like a bunker. We can take a lot more punishment. Weapons? Rail guns at full charge. Mass drivers ready. ERP 63 rounds remaining for the main guns. We've also got the close-in defense system, automated guns for anti-missile work. Never thought we'd use them against spaceships. Ilara allowed herself a brief smile. Neither did they. Navigation, plot a combat approach. I want us moving, not sitting still. Make us harder to hit. Aye, Captain. Burning main engines now. The Ingenuity shuddered as its massive chemical rockets ignited. It wasn't fast by modern standards. The Xyrath ships could dance circles around it, but it didn't need to be fast. It needed to be in the right position. All hands, battle stations, Ilara announced over the ship-wide comm. We're about to get hit hard. Damage control teams, stay ready. This is going to get rough. She looked at her crew, 12 officers and 80 enlisted personnel. All of them 200 years out of their time. All of them facing impossible odds. They looked back at her with trust, with determination, with the absolute certainty that they would do their duty. Kovas, weapons free, Ilara said quietly. Pick your targets, make every shot count. Aye, Captain, firing. The battle began in earnest. The Xyrath fleet opened fire with everything they had. Hundreds of plasma beams, particle cannons, and energy weapons converging on the Ingenuity. Space lit up with deadly light as the ancient human ship disappeared behind a wall of fire. But the Ingenuity emerged from the inferno, armor glowing white-hot but intact, and answered with thunder. Railgun rounds streaked through space, invisible death traveling at impossible speeds. Each shot was carefully aimed, precisely calculated. A Sirith cruiser exploded as a tungsten slug tore through its reactor. A destroyer broke in half when a penetrator round punched through its keel. 2 frigates collided trying to evade, their hulls crumpling together in a twisted embrace. The Xyrath pressed forward, pouring fire into the human ship. Armor plates began to fail, melting and sloughing away. Whole sections of the Ingenuity's hull turned red, then white, then began to breach. Internal compartments vented atmosphere. Crew members scrambled to seal bulkheads, fighting fires and radiation leaks. Hull integrity down to 68%. Ramos shouted over the comm. We can't take much more of this. But Ilara kept firing. Another shot. Another kill. The Ingenuity was dying, but it was taking the Xyrath fleet with it. For every section of armor that failed, a Dominion ship went dark. For every system that overloaded, another enemy vessel broke apart. Captain, they're trying to flank us, Kovas warned. 20 ships breaking formation, coming around our stern. Ilara made a split. Second decision. Helm emergency rotation. Bring our port side to bear. The Ingenuity turned with agonizing slowness, ancient gyroscope straining. The flanking ships closed in, sensing victory. They fired everything they had at the turning vessel. And then the Ingenuity's close-in defense system activated. Hundreds of automated guns erupted across the ship's port side, ancient Gatling-style weapons designed to shoot down missiles. They weren't powerful enough to destroy ships, but the Xyrath vessels were lightly armored, built for speed and shielding, not physical protection. Thousands of rounds tore into the flanking ships. Not enough to punch through to vital systems, but enough to shred sensors, communications arrays, weapon mounts. The Zayrath formation dissolved in confusion, ships colliding as they lost coordination. Main guns ready, Kovas shouted, firing. At point-blank range, 5 railguns fired simultaneously. 5 Zayrath ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by the kinetic impacts. On the Sovereign Talon, High Commander Vectron watched his fleet die. 87 ships destroyed. 40 more damaged beyond combat capability, and the human ship, that ancient, impossible human ship, still fought on. Its hull was a ruin, whole sections blown away, atmosphere leaking from 100 breaches. But it wouldn't stop. High Commander, his tactical officer said quietly, we've lost over 40% of the fleet. If we continue, I know the numbers, Vectron snarled, but he also knew the truth. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a slaughter, and the Dominion was on the wrong side of it. One ship, one ancient human vessel with weapons that shouldn't work, with tactics that shouldn't succeed, crewed by people who refused to quit. Vectron had conquered 47 worlds. He'd crushed species more advanced than humanity. But he'd never faced anyone who fought like this, with desperation, with fury, with the absolute certainty that retreat wasn't an option. Signal the fleet, Vectron said, the words tasting like ash. All ships, withdraw, full retreat. The order rippled through the remaining Dominion vessels. They turned, burning hard for the edge of the system, leaving their dead behind. In the history of the Zayrath Dominion, they had never retreated from a primitive species, until today. Captain Alara Miles sagged in her command chair as the alien fleet broke and ran. Around her, the bridge was a disaster, consoles sparking, smoke filling the air, emergency lighting casting everything in red. But they were alive, and Earth was safe. Ceasefire? She said hoarsely. Damage report. Ramos's voice was exhausted. Captain, we're a wreck. 40% of our armor is gone. Main power is failing. Life support is holding, but just barely. We've got casualties across all decks, but... He paused. We're still here. Earth Defense Command is hailing us, the communications officer said. They're asking if we need assistance. Ilara looked at the tactical display, where Earth hung blue and beautiful against the stars. 200 years had passed. Everyone they'd known was gone. But they'd done it. They'd protected humanity's home with a weapon. Everyone had forgotten. Tell them, Ilara said, feeling tears sting her eyes for the first time since waking. Tell them the Indomatex is coming home. On Earth, billions of people looked up at the stars and saw something impossible. A single ancient warship, battered and burning but victorious, holding the line against an empire. They didn't know the crew had been asleep for centuries. They didn't know this was technology from humanity's earliest days. All they knew was that when Earth needed a defender, one had appeared, and the galaxy would remember. Humanity doesn't build weapons to win battles. They build weapons that refuse to lose, even after 200 years. The Indomatex had kept its promise.